Hi, I'm Nicole. Welcome to this 90-90 hip sequence. We are about to do a good bit of work here on the ground. If you have a mat nearby, you'll probably need that for a little bit of cushion. Maybe a rug would do you good. Also, a block handy. You may or may not need it, but just in case. This setup is called 90-90, and it's 3 90-degree angles that you'll be creating with your legs and torso. The first 90-degree angle will be your shin bone and your front thigh bone. And I want you to notice how your front kneecap should be in line with your hip bone, that bony protrusion on the front of your right hip. And then you'll make a second 90-degree bend with the front leg and the back thigh. So the thigh bone is going out to the side. Your third 90-degree bend will be your hamstring and your back calf or shin. And then go ahead and flex your feet. From this position, see if you can let your arms frame your front leg and do your best to drop your left gluteal, your left sit bone down. And there will be a clear stopping point for most of us. And you're going to be sitting here for a moment or two. And by a moment, I mean at least a minute. So what's happening in this position? Why this position? Your front leg is externally rotated. Your back leg is internally rotated. And if you think about the hip, it's a ball and socket joint the same way the shoulder is. So it needs to move in a ball and socket way. Very infrequently do we find folks training internal rotation, but you see professional football players getting injured there. You see folks doing random movements and then finding their knee goes out or something strange. Oftentimes it's because we haven't allowed the hips to be hips. This exercise might be too intense. So you might be here now and find that this is a big demand. And if that's the case, I want you to elevate your back buttock up on the block. If you have any labral tears, any sort of sharp pain in the front or back hip, I'd like you to be up on a block. So what that does is it just creates more space for the thigh bones to descend out. It's less of a demand and it's less of a closing angle for the hips. So your choice. Once you're here, since we've been here for about a good minute to kind of experience a stretch, if you find a stretch, I want you to continue to hold and breathe. If you feel no stretch in the front leg, then I want you to start to arc your chest forward and lift your tail up like a ducktail. So as I do that, I start to feel sensation in my right buttock and glute and hamstring and outer right hip stuff. So this is what we're looking for, is a gentle stretch in the front leg. And it doesn't need to be intense, just enough where you feel a stretch. We're holding and breathing here to the best of your ability. If you have to come out of it, come out of it. Last 2 breaths. Now we're going to take our focus, instead of just stretching the front leg, we're going to open and close the back leg. So you're going to move your back thigh bone internally and externally. So your hands are going to come behind you, and I want you to start to rotate your chest toward your trail leg and then drop your buttock down, the back buttock down. This will feel, for most of us, even more intense. You are moving into deeper internal rotation here. You might notice that the front leg starts to lift off the ground. That's a pretty good indicator that this back leg bone can't isolate itself. It can't be divorced from the front leg. So do your best to keep about 20% tension driving this right leg down and out of the mix. From here, you're going to come onto the ball mound of your back foot, lifting the heel, and then you're going to open the leg as far as you can externally, and then you're going to internally rotate the leg back down. And then externally rotate. Notice how my heel is off the mat and I'm just rocking on the ball mound of my foot. And then you internally rotate and bring it down. We'll go one more time. So this, in and of itself, is like WD-40 for the hips. It allows blood flow to move into the back of your hip joint, into the joint capsule, and it's very good. Oxygen, nutrients. It's the language of the body. So continue to hold here and breathe. Last inhale. Good. And now we're going to let this leg open. You come onto the ball mound of the foot, let the heel lift, let the leg open, and now suddenly the front leg starts to come around, and it's following. You're in 90-90 on the other side. And that might require a slightly different setup. Maybe this is an injured hip and you do need to be propped up on a block for this side. But we're going to give it a moment to kind of let you settle into it. Look for your 3 90-degree angles. Front knee in line with the front hip bone. 1 90-degree angle, 2 90-degree angle, and then 3 with the back leg. And then let the back buttock and sit bone drop. And again, I always say there's a clear stopping point. I want you, the minute you feel like, ooh, that's where you stop. We don't just keep going into that sensation. It's a lot. Again, your pelvis is loaded by the weight of your torso. So you have to think about that. If you find that you need to kickstand yourself out, leaning out and away from the leg, that's going to relieve a little bit of the tension and effort of this back leg. Totally fine. You can even use the block if you need to, kickstand it out. But if you can manage to be upright, we're going to bring the hands to frame the front foot. And again, if you feel a stretch and the front of your left buttock, your left hip stuff, you're going to stay there and hold it. If you do not feel a stretch in the front leg butt stuff, then I need you to draw your chest up, start to lift the tail like a duck, and keep pulling your belly over the thigh. And again, it doesn't need to be a massive stretch. It's just a little bit of sensation here. Again, the front leg is externally rotated, and we're stretching the elongated tissue, so the outer left hip stuff. Back leg is still internally rotated. Just a few more breaths. Last big breath. Good. And then from here, you're bringing your hands behind you. You're rotating your torso toward the trail leg, toward the back leg, and then dropping the buttock down. And you notice this is a whole different sensation, most likely. And then from here, you're going to start to come onto the ball mound of the back foot, lift the back heel, and then let the legs swivel and open as far as it'll go, externally rotating and internally rotating back to the 90-90 position. So front leg is not involved. I'm only focused on this back thigh bone rotating within the hip joints. And then rotate back down. Beautiful. You got one more. Ball mound of the foot, heel lifts, the hip opens. That's it. Last time. Rotate it back down. Good. And then hold and breathe here. So again, I want to emphasize, if you don't feel much here, you could be more upright. Stacking the torso over the pelvis. That's a much more loaded position. So be mindful of that. The further you move out and away, the less demand it is on the hips. You got about 2 breaths here. Excellent. One more big breath. Good. And let's finish it off the same way. You're coming onto the ball of this back foot. Let the heel lift. Open, 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 open. And then maybe you find a seat on your sit bones and manually bring your legs back together. Awesome job. Just that hip sequence, if done once a day, every few days, is so helpful for hips. It creates blood flow, like I mentioned. That's nutrients. It's the language of the body, and it will keep your back and the knees, the joints above it and below it, operating even better. Thanks so much.